You mentioned earlier on, Isabella, about the spectrum, being, super hyperinsulinemic and not really be able to produce much in the way of ketones versus being in a constant state of nutritional ketosis. Some people will say that's bad. You shouldn't be in ketosis all the time. Is there a spectrum? Is it okay to pop in and out? What are your thoughts?
Well, because we investigated long-standing, healthy, pretty much always in ketosis participants, we did an intervention, and we're completing this study now. We had to wait the last 2 years to be able to run human trials again. So we're actually completing that. And so that data is going to be available out to the public by sort of April, May next year. And we had them suppress ketones for ketosis for 3 whole weeks. We would have liked to have done it longer, but that was, there were certain things that just limited what we could do. We had them suppress it for 3 whole weeks and did all the blood tests, everything all again, all glucose tolerance tests. And then we had them go back to their normal lifestyle, which was being in ketosis. And we waited another 3 weeks and then tested them all over again. And certainly in that group of participants who we class as phenotype 1, in that group, being out of ketosis for 3 weeks, where they deliberately suppressed ketosis, they tested themselves 4 times a day, spread evenly through 16 hours, recording what they ate, even things like that. But they really did make sure that they had 0.0 ketones that whole time without eating junk food. After all that, after we had tested them and they had gone back to ketosis, what was really great is we actually saw that they reverted back to their healthy phenotype completely. So in that group of people, basically it shows that they're completely metabolically flexible. So, kind of makes sense too. I mean, if historical humans were like that, and you get to have August and September and October, where you do have access to tubers, you have access to fruits, you have access to these farinaceous and sugary fruits and things, that there would be good metabolic flexibility, because then you would revert back into ketosis through winter. So we kind of mimic that in this study to have a look at that. Now that's likely very, very different for phenotype 3 people per se, who wouldn't have that metabolic flexibility. I've certainly exchanged a bit with Jeff Follick and Ben Bickman about this, where even Jeff said that when he works with people who have type 2 diabetes, hyperinsulinemic, when they have an all glucose tolerance test, or when they eat carbs on one day, it takes them 3-4 days to get back into ketosis. Whereas our participants, they have, a day full of carbohydrates, and the next day they're massively back into ketosis. They're not making an effort. And then there's another example. A lot of people don't even realize they're in ketosis. So I was having a conversation with Zoe Harcom, and she was saying, oh no, but I eat 100 to 130 grams of carbs a day. And she'll, the breakfast is berries and an orange and things like that. And I said to her, I bet you're in ketosis more than you realize. So I was like, okay, let's test. And she tested, and she had really good ketones. It was like 1.7 without any effort, because she wasn't eating refined carbohydrates. She wasn't snacking on carbohydrates through the day. And so that number, most people would say, oh gosh, that amount of carbs, there's no way you'd be in ketosis. But in actual fact, she was, and often, and it is. And so when people say, oh, it's not good for you to sustain ketosis all the time, there's going to be a fair amount of people who are very carbohydrate tolerant, very insulin sensitive, and they are eating real whole foods. They're not snacking through the day, and they're going to be in ketosis and perfectly fine. So this idea that, oh, it's bad for you, where's the evidence for that?
You could also eat more protein. Rather than...
There you go. That too. Okay. Just eat more protein, and that'll potentially lower your ketones.
Yeah, Andrew, let me ask you, because, somebody was asking about this, your particular diet, are you eating berries seasonally? Because, you've got this condition, brain cancer, that you obviously don't want to recur. How are you managing that these days? And what phenotype are you? And is that phenotype subject to adjustment? Can people go from phenotype 3 to phenotype 1 and 1 to 3, or is it set? Is it genetically determined?
Oh, that's a good one. We don't know about genetically determined, but we have got a phenotype 4. And a phenotype 4 are people who had a metabolic disease and have now gone into ketosis, sustaining a level of ketosis to, regress, maybe in remission, but not necessarily completely cured the metabolic condition per se. So it's like, if you're allergic to peanuts and you stop eating peanuts and you're not having allergic reactions, it doesn't mean you're not allergic to peanuts anymore. And so the same in that context, that we don't know how long it takes. So we don't know how long it takes before one can become carbohydrate tolerant again. And, some conditions, I'm not sure you want to even test that.
To answer your question about, what was the question? Like what?
About what you're doing as far as, to keep this brain cancer in remission for 10 years now.
Yeah, so most of my meals are carnivorous meals. But I have done tests where I can tolerate things that I couldn't before, like avocado and some broccoli and olives. I do very well with olives. Mushrooms.
It's gradually increased as you've gone.
Even things like sauerkraut, I can have. Yeah. Kimchi.
Because a lot of these things you couldn't have.
I couldn't have any of these things before. So my tolerance has definitely massively improved.
And obviously one would argue that increased tolerance is a sign of improvement in health, right? You're not just avoiding the thing that's setting you off.
Yeah, and I have a battery of blood tests every 6 months, and it's just getting better and better all the time. So I'm probably in that healthy keto phenotype.
4 or 3.
We should test.
Yeah,
we should do it. I don't know why we haven't done it yet.
And then the brain scans you get, is that annually now, or what's sort of focus of that?
Well, I was actually supposed to have one today, but it got cancelled last minute, and it made me think, why am I even having them once a year? So I feel completely fine, and there's never zero risk with having any imaging, even if it's an MRI scan that's supposed to be zero risk, even though it's not using ionizing radiation. These are very strong magnetic fields. It must be doing something. So if you're having them so regularly, it's maybe not a good idea. And for a long time, I haven't had the contrast agent because I have done a lot of research on how that could be affecting the body, having this rare earth metal injected into you, which we used to think was
gadolinium, probably. I mean, usually it's a lot of times it's gadolinium. Yeah.
We used to think it was completely safe, even if you have healthy kidney function. But now we know that it can be retained in certain regions of the brain, which is not ideal. And so I don't have the contrast agent, and I think that's possibly one of the reasons why I've done so well. It's controversial, but I think it's something that people aren't talking about, and that can actually be deposited in bone as well. So that could influence the osteocalcin readings and some of the other markers that we're looking at. So that's definitely something we'll be considering, how frequent people are having scans.